What happens when the CEO of a warehouse chain goes undercover as a night guard and finds out late shift employees are being locked out? Xavier Reed stood alone in the security booth, dressed in a faded blue uniform, and a company-issued cap pulled low over his eyes. The ID badge clipped to his chest read, Tom R. He looked nothing like the man whose face hung in framed photos inside the break rooms of all 9 warehouses across the state. He hadn't been in this particular location, Warehouse 6, since inheriting the company from his father 5 years ago. It sat on the edge of a small city, where night shifts ran heavy due to high volume. Lately, complaints had filtered through the corporate chain: missed quotas, too many sick days, rising turnover. But what bothered Xavier most were the quiet resignations, good people walking away without saying why. Reports aren't enough, he muttered, watching the empty parking lot through the glass. I want to see it. No one at Warehouse 6 had ever met him. The manager, a man named Carl, had been hired after Xavier's father passed. With 9 locations and over 400 employees, it wasn't unusual that people hadn't seen the CEO in person, especially since Xavier had focused on expanding operations, not walking the floors. He'd arrived at 6 p.m. for a full overnight shift, shadowing the 2 regular guards. But the other guard, a guy named Reggie, was sick, a phrase Xavier was starting to hear too much. By 8:30, the warehouse was in full motion behind the gates. Forklifts beeped. Pallets slammed. A few workers waved as they passed, assuming he was just another temp night guard. At 9:05, headlights swept across the lot. A small red hatchback jerked to a stop. A young woman jumped out, backpack slung over one shoulder, phone in her hand. Please, 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 she whispered, rushing toward the gate Xavier stood beside. Hold up, said a voice behind him. A man in a worn brown coat stepped out of the shadows. Short, stocky, red-faced. Carl. Xavier stayed quiet. You're late again, Naomi, Carl said. That's your 3rd time this month. I know, she said, panting. My son, he's got asthma. I had to drop him off with my sister. Not my problem, Carl snapped. We have rules. Naomi looked past him toward the warehouse. I'm already dressed, I'll go straight to packing. Nope. Locked the doors at 9 sharp. You know the policy. Xavier frowned. Wait, he said, voice low. You're turning her away, Carl raised an eyebrow at him. Yeah, you're new, right? We don't let late people in. It's policy, cuts down on slackers. She's here, she can work. Carl stepped closer. You're a guard, you don't make that call. Naomi's shoulders dropped. Please, Carl. I really need this job. I'm already behind on rent. Carl pulled out a worn notebook and scribbled something down. Final warning. 1 more late and you're done. She nodded, eyes glassy. Okay, now get off the lot. Xavier watched her walk back to the car, sit behind the wheel and stay there. Not driving off, just sitting. Probably crying. Carl turned to him. Next time, don't speak unless you're asked. Xavier clenched his jaw but said nothing. He couldn't blow his cover, not yet. The rest of the shift was quiet. A few trucks rolled through. A guy named Jace from loading came out around midnight and handed Xavier a coffee. You're new, he asked. Yeah, just covering for someone. Cool, you'll like it here. Well, some nights are rough. People get written up for breathing wrong, Jace said with a chuckle, then walked off. Xavier didn't sleep when he got home. He kept thinking about Naomi, her face, her cracked voice, the kid with asthma, and the way Carl had smiled when he locked her out. Like it gave him power. The next night, Xavier came back early. Reggie was still sick. Carl showed up again around the same time, did the same routine. Locked the doors at exactly 9. At 9:03, another worker, Lewis, came jogging up, only to be turned away without a second thought. Xavier had seen enough. He made a few calls the next morning. Quiet ones, pulled employee records, checked time cards, found a pattern. Carl had written up at least 12 people in the last 2 months for being late, but most of them clocked in less than 10 minutes past start. All of them were either single parents, students, or living across town. The next night he showed up again. This time he wasn't alone, he brought someone with him. A woman in a sharp blazer who kept her face hidden behind a clipboard. She didn't speak much, just watched. At 9:10, Naomi's car pulled into the lot again. She looked nervous, hesitant. Carl stepped out of the building like clockwork. I told you last time, Carl, Xavier said, stepping out from behind the booth. Carl's head snapped toward him. What did I say about guards talking? Xavier pulled off his cap, then the fake mustache, then the glasses. Carl stared. Wait, what the hell? I'm Xavier Reed, he said calmly. I own this place. Carl went pale. I've been working your night shift for the past 3 days. Naomi had stopped in her tracks, eyes wide. The woman beside Xavier stepped forward now and nodded at her. Carl stammered. I was just following. I've read the policy handbook. Nowhere does it say you're allowed to lock people out before a 10-minute grace period, and even if it did, it wouldn't excuse how you talked to her. He turned to Naomi. You're not fired. You're not written up. You've done nothing wrong. She stared, mouth open. Xavier looked back at Carl. We'll talk inside now. Carl followed, red-faced and silent, and Xavier, he had no doubt now, the problem wasn't the workers, it was the people running the place. Xavier sat across from Carl in the narrow staff office, the door shut behind them. The only sound came from the soft hum of a desktop computer and the distant beeping of forklifts through the walls. The woman in the blazer stood to the side, flipping through a folder filled with employee reports and timecard data. Her name was Malia Tran, Xavier's Director of Human Capital, and she'd arrived that morning on his request, quietly gathering first-hand documentation before the confrontation. Carl tapped his fingers on the metal armrest of his chair but didn't speak. You've had over 30 disciplinary actions issued in the last 8 weeks, Xavier said, voice calm but flat. Most of them for minor tardiness. Carl crossed his arms. We run a tight operation. You start giving people leeway, they take a mile. And yet productivity's down 11%, Malia added, not looking up. Employee morale surveys show this warehouse scoring the lowest across all locations. Turnover is up 27% just this quarter. Carl scoffed. People these days don't want to work. That's not on me. Xavier leaned forward slightly. You've been managing here for what, 16 months? 17. Then you should know the warehouse ran cleaner and more efficiently before you took over. Same facility, same workload. Different outcomes. Carl shifted in his seat, glancing at the door. Xavier didn't blink. Let me be clear, this isn't just about missed quotas. You're locking people out while they're trying to feed their families. You're enforcing arbitrary rules that aren't documented, and you're doing it with zero empathy. That's not leadership, that's control. Carl's jaw tightened. You're here one night and think you know what it's like. These people lie, they manipulate. You give them sympathy, they walk all over you. Malia closed the folder. We spoke to 7 employees during shift change. Not one complaint was about the work. Every one of them mentioned you. Carl stood. If you're looking for someone to coddle them, I'm not that guy. You're right, Xavier said, rising to his feet. You're not, and you won't be managing this warehouse anymore. Carl froze. Excuse me, you're done. Effective immediately, Malia will walk you out. You can't just, I can. And I just did. Carl stared at him for a long second, then turned to Malia, who nodded toward the door. He left without another word. Xavier waited until the door clicked shut, then glanced at the wall clock. It was just after 9:45. He stepped out into the corridor and walked straight to the operations floor. The workers were still moving at a fast clip, but there was tension in the air. Most of them kept their heads down, focused on tasks. A few glanced up, puzzled by his presence. He spotted a tall man in a reflective vest giving instructions near the loading docks. Xavier approached him. You're the shift lead, the man turned. Yeah, name's Aaron. I need a few minutes with your team. Can you call a quick huddle? Aaron hesitated. Right now. We've got 2 trucks waiting to load. Xavier nodded. I understand. 5 minutes, I'll make it worth your time. Aaron called out. Within moments, about a dozen workers gathered by the breakroom entrance, wiping hands on pants, some holding barcode scanners or clipboard binders. Xavier looked around the group. Tired eyes, greasy uniforms. One woman had her wrist wrapped in an old bandage. Another man had a limp barely concealed by his wide gait. My name's Xavier Reed, he said. I'm the owner of this company. A ripple moved through the group. A few exchanged looks. One guy furrowed his brow as if trying to match the name to a memory. I've been working here for the last 3 nights as a night guard. I saw things that don't reflect the company I built with my father. Silence. I saw people being shut out for being late by a few minutes. I saw workers afraid to speak up. I saw effort going unrecognized. The woman with the bandaged wrist raised her hand slightly. You mean Carl? Xavier met her eyes. Carl's no longer with us. That change is effective immediately. A few people blinked. One man let out a quiet breath. I know you've been doing your best under pressure. I've read the reports. You're short-staffed and you've been covering shifts. That ends now. I've approved emergency hiring for this location. 20 new workers over the next 4 weeks. You won't be stretched like this anymore. Aaron stepped forward. You're serious? We've been begging for more hands for months. I know, and I'm sorry it took me this long to see it for myself. A young man near the back spoke up. What about the write-ups? Some of us got docked pay. We're clearing every infraction issued under Carl's management. HR will audit payroll and reimburse anyone who lost wages due to his enforcement. A few heads nodded. The woman with the bandage raised her hand again. Can I ask something? Of course. Can we get a safety rep out here? That loading ramp's been unstable for weeks. Carl kept saying it wasn't in the budget. Xavier turned immediately to Aaron. I want a full safety review by Monday, priority level, no delays. Aaron gave a slow nod. On it. Xavier looked back at the group. You deserve better, and I'm going to make sure you get it. He paused. One last thing. I need someone to take on interim management duties while we search for a new warehouse lead. I'm not looking for someone with a degree. I'm looking for someone with the respect of this team. Aaron didn't move, but a few workers turned toward him. The young man who'd spoken earlier cleared his throat. Aaron's been holding it together for months. He's the only reason we're still showing up. Aaron looked surprised. Xavier nodded. Then, unless anyone objects, Aaron will take point for now. I'll have Malia work with him directly. No one objected. Thank you, Xavier said. Now get back to it, and if anyone needs to speak with me directly, I'll be in the office. He walked out quietly, letting the team return to their work. Inside the office, Malia was already drafting the internal memo about Carl's removal and the pending changes. Xavier leaned against the desk, watching her type. This was overdue, he said. Malia nodded. Good call on the early visit. If you'd waited for another report, this would have kept rotting. He glanced out the window toward the loading dock, where Aaron was back giving directions, gesturing calmly but firmly. I want weekly check-ins from this location, face to face. No more managing through paperwork. I'll schedule them. And Malia, when we post for the new manager, I want the job description rewritten, less about metrics, more about people. She smiled, the first real one he'd seen from her all day. Understood. Xavier turned back toward the window. Outside, Naomi was walking across the pavement in her uniform, carrying a pair of gloves. She wasn't looking down anymore. She was walking with purpose, and this time no one was standing in her way. Xavier stepped into the warehouse break room early the following Monday evening, coat still damp from the rain outside. The room smelled faintly of microwaved pasta and floor wax. A few employees sat at the long plastic table, quietly eating or scrolling through their phones. No one looked up when he entered, which was exactly what he wanted. He set down a plain cardboard box on the edge of the table and opened it. Inside were fresh safety gloves, reflective vests, and a stack of sealed envelopes. Aaron walked in a moment later, still in uniform, clipboard under one arm. His posture was tight, but there was a new steadiness to it. He'd been running point for 3 days now, and it showed in the way his coworkers deferred to him without being told to. You're early, Aaron said, glancing at the box. I figured it's better than being late, Xavier replied. These are for the team. First batch of new gloves came in today, and I had payroll issue the wage corrections. Aaron nodded but didn't reach for the envelopes. You didn't have to do that personally. I did. Because it should have never happened in the first place. The door swung open and Naomi stepped in, shaking out her umbrella. She paused when she saw Xavier, then gave a quick nod and headed to the sink to rinse her thermos. Aaron turned to her. You good for packing Zone B tonight? Yeah. April's covering Zone C, so we're tight but manageable. Xavier caught the shift in Aaron's tone. He wasn't just passing orders, he was mapping out coverage, adapting in real time. It was what Carl never did. Any issues over the weekend? Xavier asked. Aaron hesitated just long enough to make Xavier pause. Something happened, Aaron lowered his voice. Friday night. One of the new hires, Davis, he's quiet, works loading, got chewed out by Patricia. loud enough for half the floor to hear. She said he was too slow for this kind of work and sent him off the line. Did he make a mistake? Not really. He's still learning the lift schedule. Took him maybe a minute extra to clear a pallet. Did she write him up? No, just embarrassed him. Xavier's jaw tightened. Where is she now? Back office. She's been avoiding the floor since Saturday. Xavier didn't wait. He walked out of the break room and made his way down the corridor past the locker area and into the admin wing. Inside the office, Patricia sat at a desk, sipping from a thermos and reviewing printed schedules. She looked up, startled. Mr. Reed, I wasn't expecting, close the door. She did, slowly. You shouted at a new hire in front of half the shift on Friday, he said. Patricia blinked. Who told you that? I don't need names, I need answers. I didn't yell, I gave feedback. The guy's slow, I've got a line to keep moving. You humiliated him. Her posture stiffened. These new kids, they don't have any urgency. I've got standards. I'm not here to debate your standards. I'm here to tell you that what you did is not how we operate. She crossed her arms. I've been here longer than anyone out there. I know what works. Then you should know the difference between correction and disrespect. Patricia didn't speak. Xavier stepped closer. Let me be clear. I will not tolerate public shaming, belittling, or intimidation on this floor. You want to coach someone. You do it respectfully and you do it privately. One more incident like Friday and you're out. Understood? Her mouth tightened. Understood. He turned and walked out without waiting for more. Back on the floor, the loading zone buzzed with activity. Forklifts moved between bays and workers shouted brief instructions over the hum of engines. The pace was brisk, but not chaotic. It was a controlled rhythm, people stepping in where needed, moving like they knew they had each other's backs. Near the far wall, Davis worked quietly, unloading cartons into a storage rack. He moved with careful precision, checking labels twice before placement. Xavier approached him. Davis, the young man turned, startled. Yes, sir. No need for sir. Just wanted to say you're doing fine. Keep your pace, learn it right. Speed comes after. Davis nodded quickly. Thank you, I appreciate that. As Xavier turned to leave, a loud clang echoed from the mezzanine level. A crate had tipped, spilling metal parts across the catwalk. A worker scrambled to block the edge with a safety bar before anything fell. Aaron appeared at Xavier's side a moment later. That's the third time this week. The upper racks are too loose. We've been flagging them since last month. Why hasn't it been fixed? Aaron hesitated. Maintenance submitted a request last quarter. Carl shelved it. Get me upstairs. They climbed the stairwell to the second level where the full issue came into view. Several racks leaned slightly, their bolts showing signs of rust. A few had been propped with wooden wedges, makeshift and dangerous. Xavier turned to Malia, who had just arrived from the front office. I want a full structural inspection. If anything fails, we shut this section down. Malia took out her phone and started dialing. Xavier turned to Aaron. Pull your team off this level. Nobody goes up here until it's cleared. Aaron nodded without hesitation and radioed down. 20 minutes later, the mezzanine was empty. Caution tape stretched across the stairwell, and a temporary sign warned of restricted access. Back on the main floor, Xavier gathered the team by the main dock. They looked tired but alert. They were listening. Some of you have been working around safety issues that should have been addressed weeks ago, he said. That stops now. If something looks wrong, report it. If it's ignored, come straight to me. He paused, letting that land. You don't work for someone who only shows up for quarterly reports. You work for a company that listens, starting now. A few workers nodded. No applause, no cheers. Just a quiet, grounded agreement. Later that night, as shift change approached, Xavier sat with Aaron reviewing the updated schedule. The gaps from lack of staff were still there, but the coverage was tighter now, thanks to some cross-training and late shift support from other branches. You need more people, Xavier said. Aaron nodded. 3 more minimum, just to keep pace without burnout. I'll clear it tomorrow. Aaron glanced up. You're really staying on this? Xavier looked at him. I don't fix things by walking away. Aaron didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. As the night settled back into motion, Xavier stepped outside for a moment. The lot was quiet, wet pavement glistening under the lights. A few cars idled, waiting for the next shift. He spotted Naomi again, this time laughing with a coworker as she pulled on her jacket. It wasn't the same stiff walk she'd had a week earlier. Inside, Davis was still working, but now paired with a more experienced loader who was walking him through batch codes. And upstairs, the mezzanine stayed empty exactly as it should have been weeks ago. Xavier watched for a moment longer, then turned back toward the warehouse. There was still work to do. But for the first time in a long time, it felt like the right kind of work. By Thursday evening, the air inside Warehouse 6 had shifted. Not dramatically, there were still deadlines, still heavy pallets, still aching joints after a long shift, but the tension that had once hung in the corners of the building had started to lift. It wasn't lighter, exactly, just less heavy. Xavier arrived just before the shift change, walking through the front entrance this time, no disguise, no cover story. He wore a plain black pullover and work boots. No one rushed to greet him. A few workers nodded in acknowledgement as they passed, but most kept moving. That was fine. He wasn't looking for attention. He was looking for traction. He found Malia standing near the dispatch monitors, reviewing live data feeds with the new intake coordinator, a quiet woman named Lena who had transferred in from Warehouse 4 earlier that morning. "Lena settling in?" Xavier asked. "She's efficient," Malia said, keeping her eyes on the screen. "And she doesn't miss details. She flagged a mislabeled shipment before it left the dock." He nodded. "Good, we'll need her sharp. Has Aaron had a chance to review the proposed schedule adjustments?" "Not yet. He's been on the floor all afternoon covering for one of the loaders who called out." Malia paused. "He's not saying it, but he's drained." Xavier didn't need her to elaborate. Aaron had been carrying more than his share since the transition started. And with the new hires still being onboarded, there wasn't enough depth yet to rotate him out for rest. Xavier walked through the floor until he reached the north packing zone. Naomi was taping up boxes, her back straight, eyes focused. "Got a second?" he asked. She looked up, pulled her gloves off, and stepped aside. "I've been reviewing the team's shift logs," he said. "You're consistently closing out more packs than anyone else in your zone." "That hasn't gone unnoticed. I'm just trying to keep pace," she said, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Would you consider stepping into a training lead role once the new hires are fully onboarded?" She blinked. "Me, you've got the precision and the patience. I need people who know how to teach without tearing others down." She hesitated. "I've never trained before. You won't be alone. Lena will support the process. You'd just be guiding new team members through the workflow. You already do that informally." Naomi looked back toward the line. "If it helps the crew, I'll do it." Xavier nodded. That's all I needed to hear. He left her to her work and returned to the administrative wing. Aaron was there, leaning over a table crowded with shift rosters and equipment logs. His eyes were red at the edges and his hands had a slight tremor from fatigue. "You need a day off," Xavier said plainly. Aaron looked up. "I've got 3 interviews tomorrow. If I don't screen them, we could end up with another mismatch. I'll sit in on the interviews." "You're going home after this shift, and you're not back until Saturday." Aaron didn't argue. He just nodded, slowly rubbing his temples. Xavier pulled out a chair and sat across from him. "You've been holding this place together with duct tape and instinct. That's not sustainable." Aaron didn't lift his head. "They trust me now, I can't disappear." "You're not disappearing. You're pacing yourself. If you burn out, we lose the foundation we just rebuilt." Aaron looked at him. "You know, Carl used to tell us burnout was a sign of weakness. Carl's gone, and that mindset left with him." Xavier stood in motion toward the door. "Go check out early. I'll cover the floor for the last few hours." Aaron hesitated, then pushed his chair back and stood. "Don't let Davis lift anything over 40 pounds alone. He's still favoring his right side." Xavier gave a short nod. "Already flagged." As Aaron left, Malia stepped in. "We've got an issue," she said quietly. Xavier followed her to the camera station. She clicked through a feed from earlier that afternoon. In the footage, Patricia stood near the loading dock, speaking to one of the new hires, a young woman named Ayesha. The audio was faint, but the body language was unmistakable. Patricia pointing sharply, Ayesha backing up slightly, arms crossed, face closed off. Malia adjusted the volume. The voice came through, clipped and harsh. "You don't belong back here if you can't keep up." You're too soft for this kind of work. Maybe try reception if they'll take you. Xavier's jaw tightened. Pull her record, he said. Malia handed him the file. Patricia had been with the company for over 5 years. Strong productivity, but a consistent pattern of high turnover under her supervision. The same excuse every time, underperformance. Xavier closed the folder. Get Aisha in the office. 10 minutes later, the young woman sat across from him, her hands folded tightly in her lap. You're not in trouble, Xavier said. I just want to understand what happened earlier. Aisha shifted in her seat. I was moving slower than usual. I didn't want to drop anything. Patricia said I was wasting time. Did she say you didn't belong here? Aisha nodded hesitantly. Has she said anything like that before? Not to me, but I've seen her say stuff to others, always people who are new or who look like me. Xavier didn't ask what she meant. He understood. You're doing fine, he said. If anyone speaks to you like that again, you tell me directly. She nodded again, this time with more certainty. He stood and opened the door. Malia, bring Patricia in. Patricia entered, arms folded. This is about the new girl, isn't it? She said before the door even closed. Yes, Xavier said. You're being released from your position, effective immediately. What? Her voice rose. You're firing me for telling someone the truth. I'm firing you for creating a hostile environment, for targeting new hires. For making discriminatory remarks. I didn't say anything about her race. You didn't need to. Patricia's face hardened. I've been here longer than half this building. And in that time, you've driven away more talent than anyone else in this company. This isn't a warning. This is final, Malia stepped in. I'll walk her out. Patricia didn't say another word. She just turned and left. Xavier returned to the floor. Aisha was back at the dock, this time paired with a different loader who was showing her how to secure the straps more easily. She moved more confidently now, her back straight, her grip firm. By the end of the shift, the floor was running smoothly. Not perfectly, but with intention. Orders were moving, people were communicating, and the small moments of teamwork that used to be drowned out by tension were now visible. Xavier stood by the east dock as the final truck pulled away. Malia joined him, holding a tablet with the latest safety inspection results. Mezzanines cleared, she said. No structural concerns. Maintenance reinforced the racks this morning. Good. Let's reopen it next week. And the new manager posting. Keep it internal for now. We've already got leaders here. We just need to recognize them. She nodded. You staying through the weekend? I'll be back Monday. But I'm not disappearing again. He turned toward the warehouse one last time before heading out. Naomi was walking with a clipboard now, checking off supplies. Aaron's temporary replacement, a calm warehouse lead from another branch, was assisting Davis with a new loading technique. The atmosphere wasn't quiet, it was active, humming with motion, but it no longer felt like survival, it felt like work. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough.